Boom, we are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Life as a Chad YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here, wherever you may be. And of course, however you may be listening. Today, I wanted to talk about a show that I've watched a few times that I can almost guarantee a lot of you guys have watched as well. And the show, of course, is called The Sopranos. By the way, guys, this hat, I don't know how many of you guys watch Marquette, Devon Burton, the Saint and the Sinners content, but some of the stuff that he wears, I think, I'm like, oh, that looks pretty cool, and I'm always on the eye for stuff like that to upgrade the wardrobe, so to speak. And specifically the hats, because I always need hats to go to the gym and just to throw on when I'm going outside just for a quick errand or something like that. So I got this hat. Now I will say it took forever to get to my house. I don't want to make this whole video about this, but as far as the actual hat goes, I like the hat a lot. Let me know what you guys think. I think it's pretty good quality. Like the way it fits, like the way it feels. But again, like I said, it took quite a while to get here. And when there's people who do content that I like most of it and admire some of the things that they stand for, when I can support the content in small ways, I definitely try to do that. All right, let's get back to The Sopranos. So I wanted to discuss, on this channel, I always talk about interpersonal dynamics, intersexual dynamics, the red pill space, relationships within a Christian mindset, specifically an Orthodox Christian, maybe even possibly a Catholic perspective, a more traditional minded relationship. And there's a character on The Sopranos. Her name is Carmela Soprano. Obviously, she is the wife of mob boss Tony Soprano. And, on this channel, the main thing that I talk about is female nature. And I believe in the past, I've done a video about not necessarily exposing, but rather because exposing kind of gives this tilt of being nasty about it or kind of trying to dunk balls in the face style, but revealing rather the sad reality that most women, no matter how feminist, no matter how modern they believe themselves to be or not be, all expect men to fulfill and step into their traditional role that has been in place for millennia now. And of course, what I'm referring to is a protector and a provider. And a lot of times, this is even at the expense of the man not being a good person. Actually, quite frankly, being a shitty person. Now, I'm not saying Tony Soprano per se is a shitty person. Obviously, he's a fictional character, and most people have flaws regardless of good or bad and things of that nature. Then, of course, there's the other attraction points, which would be, especially in today's day and age, I would say this has probably been the case since the 1980s onward, but it's really the case now and has been much more available to more people, which is clout, popularity. And the reason why it's more available is because of things like YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and the digital social age that we find ourselves in. And so we are able to see that, yes, quite a few women, especially nowadays when we see it left, right, and center, they also find that attractive. But the thing is, ultimately, those things, a majority of the time, are extensions of the primary two things, which is a protector and a provider. So I'm going to share my screen here just in case some of you guys are not aware, but I'm going to give some background of Carmela as a character. And this, by the way, if you're like some Soprano show fan or some, individual that watches or subscribes to YouTube channels that review movies and film and TV shows, that's not what my channel is about. I don't do that. I've done that a few, like maybe once or twice on maybe one or two things, but not in the common way that YouTubers review things. I'll talk about a piece of art that I like and expound upon greater themes and ideas from my own worldview to draw examples from. Or excuse me, I use the piece of art to draw examples from. So I'm going to show you guys Carmela. If you guys aren't aware, I'm going to share my screen here. This is Carmela Soprano. And again, of course, this is a fictional character, but art really is representative in so many ways of real life. In a lot of ways, art really just shines a light on human nature, both good and bad. So just to give you guys a background of the villain, so to speak, the kind of wife villain, they on YouTube they call it the anti-hero wife. This has been common in shows like Mad Men with Betty Draper, who is Don Draper's wife, and soon they get divorced. Kind of this nagging, you know, uh, pestilent, frustrating, nothing's ever good enough sort of woman for this main character, a male main character who is extremely successful, charming, witty, attractive, the whole nine yards. Well, actually, maybe that's not always the case because the other example would be from Breaking Bad. And I haven't watched that show in a while, so I'm blanking on the names of the two characters in that. I guess I can pull it up here. So here we go with Breaking Bad. Bryan Cranston plays Walter White. He's not the most traditionally handsome man, but of course he does have charisma. He's a very smart, strong, powerful man in his own way. And the anti-hero wife is Skylar White. So this has been done a few times where there's this man who traditionally would be seen as a villain, a bad guy, a bad boy, involved in nefarious adventures, and they have a wife who kind of plays dumb to this or flat out doesn't know in some cases, aka Skylar White. Eventually, she does find out. And really, this video that I'm doing could be a case study for all three of them, realistically. And perhaps I am just going to change it to that. And that is kind of the status quo. So I just wanted to give that as an example to give you guys other examples of Carmela Soprano. And then, of course, here is Mad Men. Betty Draper right here, totally fucking hot. And then Don Draper. Uh, the reason why it's called an anti-hero is obviously because they're not the main character or the hero in the same sense that Superman or even Batman or old style westerns, that kind of good, striving for good and goodness and beating evil lead man would do. So anyways, getting back to Carmela, and I guess I'll incorporate all three of these characters, Carmela, but I really want to focus on Carmela because I think she is the most pronounced of kind of this female nature intersexual dynamic situation. So she grew up in a middle-class Italian family in the show. Her family, very much, especially her mom, definitely see themselves kind of as bougie, a part of high class society, or for lack of a better way of saying it, better society, not in the rough. And even though she was around people who were within organized crime. She is what they call a citizen. She was never within it. Her family wasn't in it, or her immediate family. Her parents were not in organized crime. Now, I believe her uncle or cousin, Dicky Moltisanti, who is related to uh, Christopher Moltisanti in The Sopranos, was the mentor of Tony Soprano, and that is Carmela's cousin or something. And I've never seen this movie because I've heard it's total dog shit. But the the prequel to The Sopranos, whatever that's called, the whatever of New York, here it is, The Many Saints of Newark. Like I said, I haven't seen that, but it kind of apparently details it a little bit more. But obviously, Carmelo is aware of this existence, and it's pretty much from an early age. By the way, guys, you guys can see deep dives into Carmela as I have as a character. You can just look her name up on YouTube and find deep dives into her character. But of course, they're going to take a little bit of a different approach than I'm about to. Um, Obviously, from a young age, she is aware of this because she's been with Tony Soprano since basically high school, maybe even earlier, maybe even later. I think it's kind of hard to pinpoint, at least for me. Maybe people who have watched the show more than I have would be able to pinpoint that. But suffice it to say, since they were young. And throughout the show, even before I was awakened and quote unquote, for lack of a better term, I hate this term because, well, I don't hate it, but I don't necessarily subscribe to it per se. But before I was red pilled and I watched this show, she was like the most annoying fucking character that ever existed. Same with Skylar White from Breaking Bad, just always nagging. And this is why this is like, especially in the liberal media, it's kind of a frustrating casting decision for these TV shows because, of course, from their liberal perspective, they hate seeing these women that are always nagging and frustrating and bitching about various things. But nonetheless, it is what it is. And from early in the show, she's just always on Tony's case. Nothing's ever enough. They live in this luxurious house. They have two kids. And throughout the relationship, Carmela is constantly, and this is really what I want to pinpoint, she's constantly struggling to come to terms with the fact that she is married to a mob boss or a high level member, mafia member. If you're not aware, The Sopranos is based off of a crime family, Italian crime family from New Jersey. And from what I've been able to gather, it's very accurate, or maybe not very accurate, but it is definitely based on real life events that were going on at that time with that family. Now they obviously take their own precautions and leeway with the show, but nonetheless. And she's always struggling with this. And then on top of it, she is Catholic. She is the stereotypical trad con wife. Back then they didn't have that term, but nowadays that is very much what you would call her, which is a trad con woman. And she goes to Tony's shrink. She goes to her own shrink. She early in the show, she goes confessing her issues and stipulations with Tony to the local parish Catholic priest. And this is a theme throughout the show all the way up to season 6. And even in the later seasons, you finally see her coming to terms and legitimately asking herself whether she loves Tony for him or what Tony is able to provide to her, the lifestyle, the clout, the notoriety, the power, and all of those things. Now, we never really do get a firm answer on this. In various videos that I've watched, there's been some YouTubers that say that it is obvious that she loves Tony for Tony, and it's obvious that Tony loves her for her. Personally, I'm not so sure that that's true. I do think from Tony's side, his character does love Carmela, but he's a man. He's a man that uh steps out from time to time. He's highly influential, has a lot of money, has a lot of power, has a lot of status, and he steps out from time to time. Not only is this the case with the average powerful man, but this is really the case for a powerful mafia boss. And it really, when every time I see the show and I'm looking at Tony, what he's doing, it always pops in my mind the quote that men are only as faithful as their options. And, Tony has all these options. Now, to me, Tony is not the most traditionally handsome man. I mean, he is tall, he is big, and he does kind of have that masculine, burly, kind of grandpa-esque um, persona. But as far as like actual looks go and things like that, I mean, he's definitely not the worst. But I personally, not to get weird here, but I personally would not consider him to be a traditionally handsome man. But it's kind of funny though, because there's another character in this show. I'm gonna pull him up that apparently a lot of women find this guy attractive. So it's Steve Buscemi, like, and I've seen a few Steve Buscemi's stuff. I saw um Empire Boardwalk or Boardwalk Empire, I think it's called. Apparently, a lot of women find this guy attractive. Now, from what I have seen and read, it's kind of a situation where he is so ugly and so unique looking in his ugliness that he's attractive. And how, only women could conjure up that nonsense. But anyways, so Tony is only as faithful as his options, which of course he has a lot of options because of the power and strength that he projects. But Carmela, throughout the show, not only does she struggle with coming to terms with her relationship with Tony, and of course, building up her own stick castle in her mind, or whatever you call it, a fake castle in her mind, by trying to bring good quality people around Tony, but she also finds herself entering into these side, somewhat encounters slash relationships, because one is more than the other. Not all of them are full-blown sexual relationships. Like, for example, the one with the priest was mostly spiritual, mostly conversative, but towards the end, it very much toes that line. Now, it doesn't end up being romantic and physical, but it does toe the line. Then in like the second or third season, she comes across this wallpaper guy who has his own wallpaper company. Definitely very much a traditionally handsome man, strong in his approach and kind of how he presents himself. And they kiss, but I don't believe that they sleep together. And then the third man is the school counselor for AJ. I think it's in season 5 because I just saw it. And this is probably the most revealing relationship of who Carmela is as a woman, that is illustrative of a lot of women, really, which I'll get to. And her and Tony are separated. They're still married, but they are separated. And of course, she ends up going and confessing her attraction to the aforementioned pastor or priest, rather Catholic priest, who does not absolve her and says, "No, you need to try and get back with your husband. Marriage is a sacred institution." The whole spiel, which he's right. He's absolutely right. You know, every time I see it, I'm like, based, that's based. Let's go. And so she goes to him, doesn't get any relief there from her conscience, and she ends up sleeping with the school counselor. And then fast forward to one more date past the first one in which they sleep with one another. And she finds out about how her son got a bad grade on a paper that he wrote that she helped him with and they spent a lot of time on because of course, you know, she wants her kids to go to good colleges and she's, you know, pretty much the whole character of the son is this constant, you got to do more work, you got to do more schoolwork, you got to do more schoolwork. Um and on the second date, she ends up venting about this to the school counselor in the middle of them, I guess, rummaging in the sack or beginning to. And she has to put a halt to it, even after the school counselor says he's been dreaming of it all day. And, you know, he couldn't do anything but think of Carmela all day, which is total lunacy. In this show, she's already like fucking 50 years old. So it's totally absurd. I mean, she looks good for a 50-year-old, but it's just absurd that she'd be getting this much play. And they don't end up having sex that night after she expresses her issue with the paper, and she asks him to do a favor and help her son out, and then he ends up doing that, and they get together for a third date. Immediately upon seeing each other, they have a sexual encounter. And then right after they're done having sex and the post-nut clarity begins to reveal itself from the school counselor, he admits to Carmela that he's sick about the fact that he made another teacher change the grade of her son's paper. He says he wants to, every time he thinks about it, he wants to pluck his eyes with a clothes needle or whatever the fuck. And he ends up admitting to Carmela that she is a user, that she uses people for favors and things, and she grants the only thing that she has to give, which is her pussy. That's literally what he says. He says, you strong arm me with the only thing that you had available, which is your pussy. And she goes, how dare you? How dare you? And that is the end of the relationship. And, you know, of course, she resists and says that it hurts and that he's sick for thinking that. Um, but of course, he's right. He's absolutely right. And then, of course, she says that that's what people do. People use each other, especially if they care about each other. They use each other for other things. And that relationship is done. Fast forward to the end of the season, and her and Tony are starting to rekindle their relationship. And at the end, basically, the agreement is upon entering back into a relationship is for Tony to buy and finance a $600,000 spec house for Carmela. And so Carmela really, and so that's kind of the main synopsis that I want to give you guys of this character. And really, what Carmela illustrates, especially in Western society, but I think that this really is the case at large, is it really illustrates and focuses and puts into complete clarity. So hopefully, right, stricken for this, but I wanted to play this clip before I go into my synopsis about what this really illustrates and kind of how it represents the modern, well, not even just the modern woman, but women in general, and kind of what they're looking for in a man and what they're willing to overlook, especially what we've seen throughout history. I mean, do you know how many women have been with uh super and had children with super powerful men? I mean, Genghis Khan. I mean, how many Chinese or Mongolian rulers have there been that have just sired all of these kids? I mean, it was a common thing, but outside of modern society, for an army to defeat another army or totally plunder a village, kill all the men, and the women had to give themselves up to those men in order to have their life spared. And so the theory is that women biologically, they have the genes to be able to get over a relationship being ended far quicker than men do, because they have had to do it their whole, it's in their DNA to do it. They've been asked to, their ancestors have been asked to do it over and over and over again. Now, obviously, as a Christian, I see the spiritual side of things and believe that human beings have free will and have the free will to do good and move closer to God. But I can't argue with the logic there. I mean, I mean, just logically speaking, if you look back in history, that has to be the case for a large amount of women. And we do know that statistically speaking, a large segment of men end up being the last ending point of their genealogy. In other words, they don't have a woman that finds them appealing enough to have kids with them and have babies with them in order to have the genes moved on or propelled forward. Now, I don't think humans and animals are related or the same thing as evolutionists would think, but even if you look into the animal kingdom, that is definitely what we see as well, that the strongest of the male lineage, of course, there are exceptions. There are some species that are totally insane, like black widows and things like that. Black widows, I don't think are animals, obviously, but point is there are exceptions. But by and large, even in the animal kingdom, it's always the strongest alpha male that is getting a majority of the action. So, but we're going to continue on that, but let's watch this.
I want to poke my eyes out with a knitting needle.
What does that have to do with us?
I just think we should,
Look, I got to play it from the beginning because I told you guys the line. Hopefully, let me see if I got it right.
Because every time I think about putting the arm on Tom Fisk, I want to poke my eyes out with a knitting needle.
With a knitting needle? Is he a part of the tribe? He kind of looks like he might be a part of the tribe. You know what I'm saying?
What does that have to do with us?
I just think we should, not do this.
Oh, no. Here, tell me.
I don't know any.
And she's devastated by this because in the show, as a tradcon woman who also sees herself as very intelligent and capable, and ultimately this is never expressed. And even when she got her opportunity during this time frame of the show right here, she fails. Even in this time frame, she looks to another man to be the answer to her problems. And I'm going to also get to the type of men that Carmela chooses to have these kind of side emotional relationships with. She kind of chooses these more sensitive beta men. And, of course, within the red pill space, what is always talked about? It's the fact, well, I have the perfect phrase: beta bucks, alpha fucks. It's women choosing the alpha strong, even if they're a shitty man that can provide and protect, to have all of them as a woman. But of course, going to guys like this, the more beta sensitive type, in which to kind of console and make themselves feel better about their choices.
Any other way to put this? I've been thinking, I don't know. I think you're a user, Carmela.
What?
Maybe you saw an opportunity in me and you just took what you needed.
Oh, that is not true. I am here because I enjoy being with you. It was wonderful, in fact.
Yeah, it was. I mean,
I gotta say, I love the New Jersey accent. I think I wish I could do it, but it's hard to do. It really is.
It is, I know.
How could asking someone you're with for help be using them? That's what people do. Bob, this hurts.
Oh, Bob.
Oh, my stomach. I feel sick.
You strong-armed me using the only weapon you have, your pussy.
He may be a beta, but he's a fucking strong beta. Oh, fuck. All right, so that's it. That's basically the clip. Like I said, I don't want to get copyright stricken, but the truth that she's hit with there is devastating. She is absolutely devastated. So, just to wrap this up, I really do think that Carmela is a perfect example that by and large, women, and this really speaks to the nature of women, and it will help you understand women. And me making this video is not saying that it's right. In fact, a lot of it is wrong. This is why I believe in the nuclear family. What I'm about to talk about is why I believe in the nuclear family, why I believe in having a strong male figure, a father, a grandfather, a brother, to facilitate assisting women in finding good men, not just men that will be able to provide at least somewhat and protect at least somewhat, but men that will be good individuals for their daughters. God-fearing men that will be good family men and things like that. But it is really illustrative that a majority of the time, women would rather be one of a few for a really successful, powerful man, even if he's a bad man, than be the sole woman of an average to below average, good hearted, good souled man, for lack of a better way of saying it. It's sad. It really is, but it's the truth. Is this the case 100% of the time across the board? Of course not. But you'd be surprised just how often it really is the case. You look at Carmela, at any point, she could have left the relationship. And of course, this is the TV show. I get it. But at the end of the day, it is illustrative of so many stories that we see in real life where these women are so willing and so easily willing to look past. I would say Carmela actually is not completely representative because most modern women would be able to look past a man like Tony Soprano like that. Like they wouldn't even think another thought about it. Like, Andrew Tate, I don't think he's a bad man, but of course what he did with his recording business, I would not consider a quality person venture in which to partake in. And he has women all over the place. And let's keep it real. I mean, Andrew Tate is totally, in a lot of people's eyes, viewed in a very negative way. Even if I don't think he's a bad guy, in a lot of people's eyes, he is seen as a bad guy, but he's still not struggling for pussy. So Carmela, I actually think that aspect of her is a little bit hyperbolic because most women would totally be able to just look past it and not give it a second thought. But again, her character really speaks to that reality. That at the end of the day, the primary thing that women are looking for is power from a man and his ability to provide and to protect. And most of the time, power is downstream of a man's ability to provide and protect. Carmela could have left the relationship many times throughout the series. And we see multiple times where she actually does consider it and try to do it. But at the end of the day, the money, the cars, the lifestyle, the status, she could not overcome it. And I watched this show, and I think that this is accurate to a degree. I don't think Tony Soprano is actually evil, because in the show, he's asked by uh, his not secretary, his therapist rather, if he thinks he's going to go to hell, and he says no, because he considers himself a soldier. It's just part of what they do. And there is some logic to that. It doesn't take away in God's eyes from the good, in my opinion, from, just because just because you consider yourself a soldier and to be doing soldierly type things doesn't mean that God does not still look illy on adultery or murder or stealing and bribery, all these heinous acts. But in one of the YouTube videos that I saw, from Carmela's point of view, Tony is the devil that she's making the deal with, that she's coming to terms with. It's from the saying, to make a deal with the devil. And this is the burden that she bears and the devil that she's doing business with in order to facilitate this lavish lifestyle for her and her kids. Which, again, down the line, it does eventually end up taking its own toll on her kids. So make no mistake, guys, this is a very common thing. From a male's perspective, this is not me saying that you need to become a bad man or a bad boy, okay? Because you can be a strong, masculine man without doing bad things. So this is not me excusing Tony's behavior or anything like that. It's just to illustrate that ultimately, if as a man, what you're really focused on is finding a girlfriend or a wife and what have you, the main thing that you need to be focusing on outside of your relationship with God is how to become better in those two areas, legally, of course. How to become a stronger man, how to become more masculine and athletic and strong and all these things. It's not rocket science, guys. This has been going on since the dawn of time. Just because there's all this bullshit within the media and school and propaganda and all this stuff doesn't take away from what our instincts tell us. All right, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of change of pace that I did. I thought that this would be a fun, interesting video to do. Be sure to smash that subscribe button, like, comment. You guys know the drill. And last but not least, DBAP, don't be a pussy willow. And facts are feelings, because your feelings just don't matter. See you guys next time. Christ is King. Peace.